Butch Hawkins, yes. Chief Strahan?
Yes.
Okay, David Mascaratello?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty, Steve Draculich?
Yes.
Okay, Gene Wall?
Yes.
Amy McMahon?
Yes.
And Jen Ralston. Jen?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, it is good. Okay, for the meeting of the 18th, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Steve? All right. David Singer, how do you vote?
Yes, I think you asked, right?
Yeah. Butch, I vote yes. Chief Strahan?
Yes.
Yay, David Mascaratello?
Yes.
All right, Steve Draculich?
Yes.
Dean Wall?
Yes.
Amy McMahon?
Yes.
And Jen?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, that takes care of the prior minutes. Yes, Ed?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know in the chat, Don Moore wrote in there that she is recording the meeting, just to let you know.
Well, okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We do have recording the meeting. Okay, the next item on the agenda is project cost estimate expected date for committee review. I know Chico Ross is still working with the estimators, so maybe an update from Katrina or Dennis as to when we can expect to review the cost estimates.
Right. I'll give that update, Butch. Thank you. We are still working with the estimator and our entire team on that. We do expect that next Thursday, I believe the 16th was another date and time at 4 o'clock, that the committee would be able to meet, and that's where we would expect to present the estimate information to the group.
Okay. Anyone, any questions of Katrina on the matter of the cost estimate? Okay. All right. Thanks, Katrina.
You're welcome. And just to know, Adam joined the call.
All right. Perfect. Adam. Thanks. Okay, moving down the agenda. The next item is the pre-qualification process and schedule by Neil Joyce. I will say that Neil and I have spoken about this and sort of worked out what we feel would be a really good number for a committee for this, which is 5. When we get into the next piece of it, which would be the pre-qualification subcommittee discussion, we can discuss it. But for now, I'll leave it to Neil to sort of bring us through the requirements of the law, what's involved, the kind of work that's involved, what committee members will do, sort of the numbers of people that might provide bids for us to review. I can't overestimate the importance of this process. I know in the past, members may have felt like they weren't involved too much in what was going on with the building committee, but this is clearly a spot where involvement really begins, because I think, as Neil will point out to folks, there is a fair amount of work involved in this piece of it, which is critical to the process. So I'll turn it over to Neil. And everyone should have that. I think we forwarded that to everyone. So you should have the template for what he's going to discuss at the moment.
Everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. So the pre-qualification process is a mandatory statutory requirement for any public construction project in Massachusetts with an estimated construction cost greater than $10 million. In the absence of the estimate, we're assuming that we are going to be at or above that number based on the numbers that we see at schematic design from Pacheco Ross. So we're suggesting in the essence of time that we would move forward with this process at this point in time. Any contractor who has interest in submitting a bid for this project, be it a general contractor or a subcontractor, will be asked to submit their qualifications in advance of submitting their bids. Only contractors that have successfully pre-qualified for the project are invited to submit bids for the project. There is a 100-point scoring system that is defined by the statute. We'll get a little bit more into how those points are broken out and the different criteria that are used to score those. And we would anticipate for a project of this size, roughly 120 submissions from each of the trade contractors and general contractors that would have interest in the project. So this will be a fairly significant undertaking moving forward. In terms of the whole process and how it plays out, we will be asking for volunteers to establish a pre-qualification subcommittee, and that will be made up of myself representing the OPM, presumably either Katrina, Adam, or Dennis representing Pacheco Ross, as well as 3 committee members representing the city of Greenfield. We will prepare the request for pre-qualification, the RFQ. We will work with Laura to structure it per the statute. There will be 2 different pre-qualification requests that go out. One is dedicated directly to general contractors, and one is dedicated to subcontractors on the project. So they're slightly different. We'll get into some of those nuances. This will in fact act as a public pre-qualification. So there is an advertisement and a solicitation that has to happen per state guidelines. We will be receiving responses both in paper and electronic copies, similar to what we did on the temporary fire station. There will be an evaluation period of roughly 60 days to evaluate the responses from the proposed subcontractors and general contractors. They will be scored. All respondents will be provided with correspondence from the city that indicates that they either successfully pre-qualified or failed to pre-qualify for the project. And then we will go through a bidding process when the project and the design is completed, that will be limited to only those contractors that successfully pre-qualified. The RFQ is pretty simple. It's broken up into 3 major parts. First part focuses on contractors' management experience, and that breaks down 50 points. So half of the strength of their proposal is based on their management team, and that's broken down to the owners of the company, the specific management personnel dedicated to this project, their similar project experience, public construction experience in terms of any terminations, legal proceedings. We ask them to substantiate their safety record through issuance of documents through their insurance company, and also their compliance records as they may pertain to this project. And that is their ability to obtain and solicit minority business enterprises and women business enterprises in a certain percentage that meets goals on publicly funded projects. So one thing we will be asking of the committee or the subcommittee will be to help us to define which categories of work are the most important to them. And that is to say that by statute, we must have 50 points within management experience, and that a minimum of 25 points is required for a firm to be pre-qualified. But the subcommittee will be given some latitude as to how those 50 points are allocated to each of the 7 subcategories within the management experience. So we can get into that in a little bit more detail, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Similarly, part 2 of the RFQ asks for contacts to provide references. That is both references for their construction abilities as well as their any private experience that they may have, as well as their credit references that come in. And again, 30 points are dedicated to references. They must obtain a minimum of 15 points for pre-qualification. And again, the awarding authority will have the ability to designate the number of points to each of those categories under references. And then lastly is a firm's capacity to complete the project. So we look at prior revenue as well as revenue under contract for each of the submitting firms, and we score them accordingly. Typically, these are expressed as a percentage or a ratio of the estimated value of the work that they are doing on this project as a percentage or as a fraction of their revenue that they're projecting both on a yearly basis as well as over the next 3 years. So we have an idea of what they have on the books and how much more work they'll be chasing in the interim. They are also required to provide a commitment letter from their bonding company that they can be bonded to 100% of the estimated contract and or subcontract value. They are required to certify or provide their current DCAM certificate of eligibility, as well as their update statement, which will identify their capacity as well as work that they have under contract and any work that they have completed since their last DCAM update. So we should have a very good idea of what else they have going on within their operations. In terms of that completes the qualifications piece of it. They will be submitted most likely in a 3-ring binder or a bound notebook. We'll also ask them for electronic submittals for those people that would rather have them electronically. We anticipate that the proposal, these dates might be a little bit aggressive, but we're anticipating that we will get the proposal out on the street before the Christmas and New Year's holidays. We will they will roughly have 2 to 3 weeks to reply. I'm sorry, they will have a minimum of 2 weeks, most likely 3 weeks to reply to the RFQ. We will look for those to come back to us sometime in mid-January. We'll set the exact dates with procurement and with Laura as we move forward. And we would hope that the end of the RFQ evaluation would be on or about the 1st of March. And then we would be issuing notifications to the RFQ respondents by mid-March, after this committee has weighed in fully as a body and accepted the recommendations and the scoring of those evaluators. And we're anticipating bid documents available sometime during April of 22. So the last piece of it is, again, just an explanation of the evaluation scorecard that we'll use. Again, distribution of points within each category will be determined by the board or by the evaluators. That is the 50 points, 30 points, and 20 points. We will work with the city to establish a rubric that will help the reviewers evaluate each of the criteria and help them assign points based on what they could expect to see in the RFQ. The way that we do it is we will take the total number of submittals and we will take the total number of members that are participating in this process, and we will establish a primary reviewer for, if there are 5, it'll be everyone will do 1/5 of the total number of packages that come in. And then we'll convene that subcommittee as necessary throughout the evaluation period to ask questions, seek clarification, provide assistance, and present findings to the smaller group. Those meetings will have to be public, will have to be advertised. Any committee members are willing to observe the process and can certainly ask questions. And then the subcommittee will make a final recommendation of pre-qualification status to the full building committee, as I said, sometime prior to the availability of bid documents. So that is essentially the pre-qual process. I will stop sharing and come back to the committee and certainly be willing to answer any questions that you may have. It is a time-consuming process. It will take several weeks to get through all of the proposal packages. We are not shifting the responsibility onto the committee. We'll be right there in the trenches with you and chasing references and providing any support that we can give along the way.
And just one addition, Neil will provide, all the process that the subcommittee will see in the town hall for Laura, for any other member that wants to see the whole shebang of the information coming in. Maybe just review that for the folks, if you would.
Yeah, so we will make sure that there is at least one paper copy of all of the RFQs that have been received on file at City Hall, so that anybody from the committee who is not participating in the evaluation process would be able to review those documents. We will also provide them electronically for those people that don't want to go to City Hall but would still like to participate in the review.
Okay. Dennis, you have a question?
I do. Neil, once the subcommittee does its work, how long is that work good for? In other words, a month, 3 months, a year, 2 years? Or is there no time limit whatsoever on pre-quals?
Dennis, I would say that we would want to time it so that we were effectively rolling to the conclusion of the pre-qualification when the bid documents are getting ready to go out on the street. So
The question is, once we've made that pre-qualification, how long can the contractors count on it being live?
I would think that we could probably argue within the same bidding season with the AG's office. I've never been asked that question. But I would think that we could make an argument that if we bid it within the same, really probably the same 6-month period, that we would be okay.
Okay, I don't see any reason not to. I just curious,
Yeah, so I would say if we complete a pre-qualification process and instead of April 1, it's June 1 when the documents go out, I would say we're fine. If it was April 1 of 23, I may not necessarily feel the same way because a lot can change with a contractor in a year.
So I know there was a lot of information out there, and it's so I know folks may have some questions. David, you're muted.
All right, just a few questions. Neil, can you explain the the process to follow up on references? Will you be doing that as the CMS as far as credit references? It sounds like might be a lot of time consuming phone calls and research. Who does that part of it? The project and the credit references.
So the way that we've done it in the past, Dave, is that we would assign, like I said, if let's talk in general numbers. Let's say there are 100 proposals and there are 5 reviewers. Each reviewer would be responsible to chase down all of the information on roughly 20 references, and the references are provided within each of the contractor's update statement. So it's as easy. I say it's as easy as we can provide you with a standard evaluation reference check, questions, simple 1 to 5 grading scale. They can be by email, they can be by phone conversation, they can be by snail mail if you wanted to. It's however we can gather that information that comes back to us, and that is part of the process in going through each of the evaluations.
Okay. Yeah, I think it should be standardized, and we should be asking the same questions to.
Agree 100%.
My other question was, did you mention when you did the intro that the subcommittee meetings are public meetings?
Yes.
Is that a little concerning? I mean, we're going to be talking about contractors that could actually be on the public meetings and
Yes.
discussing details.
I've questioned this, David, and my understanding from Butch and others is that the subcommittee would be treated as if it was its own public board and subject to open meeting law.
And even though we're handling confidential financial information?
I think we would have to be careful during those meetings, and if we were going to discuss any information that was intended to be confidential, it would have to be done so in executive session.
All right, I think there should be some more conversation based around that. So we're not on a call and then have to decide. You know, it seems to me that I don't have a problem with public meetings. I'm just concerned about if what we talk about at the sub meetings to qualify is going to jeopardize or cause an issue with a bidder that could be joining the meetings, and we're talking about their company. So I think it's something we should check into with the Attorney General's office and have the discussion.
Certainly.
Neil, how many, roughly, as an estimate, how many of these companies are public and how many are private normally do you see? I mean, because there's a difference between a public company and a private company when it comes to information.
When you say public, Butch, do you mean
Publicly traded? Yeah.
I would say the vast majority of firms that we'll be dealing with are private organizations.
Okay. Yeah, we should definitely, I know you've reached out to the AG, but maybe the city attorney and others, just so that we're really clear on, once we get into the weeds on it, about where we stand with how we deal with information. David Singer?
Thank you. I believe Caitlin sent out recently an update from the Attorney General's office to all of us about dealing with open meeting. And David, I have to say that starting the meeting would have to be in public session. The issue you're bringing up is under what circumstances can that subcommittee meeting go into executive session? But
Dave, I think we missed some of what you said. I think you froze up a little bit. Sorry.
Sure. Caitlin sent an email during the last week or so, updating us on the Attorney General's rules for open meeting law. And my reading of it was that the subcommittee you're talking about would have to comply with open meeting law. So you're going to have to start the meeting open. So the questions you're asking are not open meeting law questions per se, I don't think. I think they're questions of when can that subcommittee go into executive session if you think there needs to be a conversation that is confidential or complies with the with the ability to go into executive session, but you will have to have that subcommittee meeting and discussion in public. Okay, I just want, nobody needs to go to the Attorney General because Caitlin sent that to us, is what I'm trying to say. It might be finer points just to help out. That's all, just being helpful. Thank you.
And I would think by the time we get to that process, Neil will have it nailed down pretty tight on how we deal with that. Are there any other questions on the pre-qual process timeline? Sure, Steve.
Just a kind of a follow-up question to David's. Is this typical? Every town that does that looks into contractor qualifications is an open meeting, or is this something that that we are imposing upon ourselves? Have you, in other fire stations, other projects that you've done, have they had to do this same process?
I think there's 2 points to that. One, if you create a subcommittee of a committee as a government body, and the other is maybe if it just runs through the city procurement office, there may be a difference. Maybe Neil or David Singer can help out with that. But it seems to me to beg two paths of how a community might review
It
bidders.
seems incredibly cumbersome
Mm,
to do it that way.
yes.
Really, really tough.
Steve, from a process standpoint, any project that's over $10 million has to go through this process.
Yes, I understand that.
It has largely been my experience in the past that very few, if any, meetings are required in the interim period. So we go through a process, we distribute the evaluations to the committee along with instructions for how to evaluate it, what to look for, how to score it. We may have a meeting at the beginning to make sure that everybody understands what they're looking at. And then we take questions on a one-by-one basis to help the reviewers get through it. Then we come back and we revisit it again at the end in a public forum, and there's a recommendation made and normally an acceptance.
Okay.
So that's sort of the process. The
Okay.
interim piece of it can be as public or as non-public as necessary in order to support the committee.
Okay. I feel better about that. I was worried about, being deep in the weeds every time we're talking about this. Second question is, I'm just sort of curious, knowing construction, why we are trying to do anything before Christmas. Things just get very tough. And are we expecting that, sending stuff out to contractors before Christmas is going to affect the number of respondents to the RFP?
The magic of the mid-December date is to put it out, get it into their hands before the holidays, give them a standard week, 2 weeks or more to reply in January, and allow us time working backwards from a presumed April 1 bid document date.
So the magic is April 1.
If the April 1 date is really May 1, then we certainly don't have to go out until early January. It's really just working backwards from the bid date and giving the evaluation committee enough time to do the work.
Okay. That's all I had.
Okay. Any other questions on the process, the scheduling of it? No, there's a lot there. Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, pre-qualification subcommittee discussion. So like I said before, Neil and I have discussed it. I know the library had 4 folks, but given the size of our committee, I think, it's not unreasonable to ask 3 committee members from our committee, given the size of our committee. to support the OPM and the designer through this part of the process. Suppose we can approach it a couple of different angles. We can ask for volunteers, or we can ask for nominations. Just kick it out there for discussion. Anybody wants to discuss how we proceed in creating the committee? Members of folks on the committee?
Why don't you ask for volunteers?
Okay. Who would like to volunteer? Who would like to be the first volunteer? Steve, welcome aboard. Another volunteer? Greg, thank you very much. 2. Just need one more person that would be interested in helping out. Peter? Okay. So I think we need a motion to accept the volunteers to create the committee, which would include who, Dennis? Would it be you, Dennis? As well as Neil?
I don't know that it'll be me as a person. I think it will be our company and however we sort it out.
Okay. Chico Ross?
Dennis, I think for the record, there should be one person from your
name?
firm that's designated that has to be named. Just for the record, believe me, myself and my staff will be working together. I know that you and your staff will be working together, but somebody just needs to be the face of the company.
Sure, go ahead, Butch. Put my name on there.
Okay. So it would be Neil Joyce, Dennis Ross, Steve Draculich, Greg Diefendorf, and Peter McIver. Could we have maybe a motion to accept those volunteers as the subcommittee for the pre-qualification process?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Who's the so mover?
Jen.
Thank you.
Oh, Jen got it. Second.
Yeah. Second. Okay, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, let me get my pen. Hey, David Singer, how do you vote?
Yes.
Hawkins is yes. Chief Strahan?
Yes.
Hey, David Mascaratello? David? Yes. Okay, I see you say yes. Steve Draculich?
Yes.
Okay, Gene Wall?
Yes.
Amy McMahon?
Yes.
And Jen Stromston.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thanks, folks, for volunteering. It's a real big part of what we need to have done here. A very important part. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the next section would be the budget update and review.
Also included in the package, the information that we had sent out prior to the meeting was just an update snapshot of where we are. We just actually sent a set of invoices into Laura's office yesterday. So we included those as well, showing the overall process of where we are, invoices paid to date, forecasting completion, costs of completion. Things are tracking where we expect them to at this point in time. And we're still holding the $17 million budget that we had presented. Total costs to date are just over 2.5 million in total.
Any questions on the budget update from anyone? Okay. Thank you, Neil. Okay, temporary fire station update.
Last week, the New England Builders was on site and reconstructed the entry door heading guess that would be east from Apparatus Bay 1 up to Apparatus Bay 2. And in an effort to try to help stem the flow of water under and around that doorway into the lower Apparatus Bay. It was somewhat successful, not perfect. I've been talking with the chief this morning about arranging for the contractor to come out and do some additional work to supplement that, and that work is in process. I think for the largest part, the balance of the punch list work at this point has been completed. The water infiltration at the upper bay is significantly improved, if not eliminated, since the efforts from late October, I guess they were. So that's good news and moving in the right direction. And the build out work at 13 Prospect Street has started, and we are still in the process of sort of working through that. I know we've ordered, the lighting work has been replaced. We're in the process of replacing some of the circuitry and the heating equipment. And we're trying to come up with a scope of work for the walls and other areas that will keep us within the allowance that was provided under approval by the committee. Fair enough, Chief? Did I miss anything?
No, just 13 Prospect Street. A lot of work has been done this week. Electrical work that you mentioned is ongoing. You know, I'm hoping, optimistic within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll be in a position where the staff can move in.
Anybody with any questions on the temporary updates, temporary fire station updates? Okay, seeing none. Okay, so we'll plan to have a meeting on the 16th at 4 o'clock. Obviously, the agenda will be the cost estimate. We'll also have the budget update on it as well, and any further temporary fire station issues or updates as well. Is there anything else that anyone at this moment would like to see on the agenda? Okay.
Butch, I'll just offer that I would not be surprised if we have not processed any additional bills between now and next Thursday. So I will be happy to address any questions, but the information for the budget will look as it does today.
Today, okay. All right, thanks.
Marlo?
Yeah, thank you. I won't be here I'll be at the meeting next Thursday. If you feel a representative from the DPW needs to attend, let me know. I'll be going down probably off the grid 2 to 6 weeks. The way it looks now, I'm having surgery. So just let me know if I need to send a representative from DPW.
Hey, Katrina?
Yes, thank you. In response to Marlo's question, I would suggest yes, that someone from DPW be present at next week's meeting.
Is that something in George's wheelhouse or possibly the superintendent, engineering superintendent? What do you need?
I think George would be the right person.
Okay.
Okay. Any
Thank you.
others? Very good. Okay, we've arrived